Hello? Hello? All right. Here we go. All right, it is 4:05 p.m. At 4:30, you know what's happening. We're going to be going into the networking lounge there for hors d'oeuvres and some drinks and conversation. So we wanted to start the final portion of today's program, today's summit, with report outs from all of the wonderful breakout rooms that happened. And so let's just take a moment, and we're going to be hearing from these individuals here. And we have State Senator Becker, Josh Becker, here with us today. He's going to be in the audience listening to all of the work that's been done today before he provides some closing remarks. So he wanted to be caught up on the day too, so we're going to be hearing from our breakout session leaders first, and then moving on to closing remarks from Senator Becker. So with that, I will pass it on to Joel Valencia, who will start us off with key takeaways.
Thank you. Okay, so I had the pleasure and the privilege of facilitating a panel and then a group discussion around funding for community resilience. And so I'm going to present this in two quick pieces. The first part of this is the panel itself. We used the POP model. We talked about purpose, the outcomes that we were hoping to see, and the process that might get us to some of those outcomes. So we heard from various folks about how the personal connection and the experiences that they had in their respective communities, growing up here, being here, and throughout the state, really informed the work that they were doing in their respective professional roles. And the importance of meeting the community where it's at to really move forward with the work that they're doing. And then how the catalyst moments in their personal lives and professional lives and the injustice of inequity really fueled their work and their commitment to do this, the climate resilient work that we're all doing. As far as outcomes, we heard a little bit about the hyperlocal movement building that's necessary to really achieve the change that we want to see, leveraging available funding to do that, and then thinking about how we might change the processes so resources are available and accessible to the folks that are actually doing the work on the ground. And the process, some of the processes that we can start to work on to get to that point are committing to continuing to be community partners, changing inherently inequitable application processes, and expanding eligibility to include unrepresented or underrepresented communities in the work of doing climate resilience. And then we heard from the audience through various exercises, and I collected some of those answers around feelings, the commitments that you all want to make, and the needs that you feel you have in order to make those commitments possible. So folks felt inspired, hopeful, impatient, and connected. We had a range of commitments from the community, including willingness to collaborate, intersectional connection, bringing together, I put finders as funders, doing local advocacy work, workforce development, learning, supporting community leadership, and educating others. And how we get there, no surprise, we need more funding to actually make this work possible. But also, a lot of folks are looking for ways to collaborate with community partners and for folks to participate in initiatives that they're running. So as we're out here networking after the sessions are over, I think that there's great possibilities for synergies within respective organizations that are doing the work. Who's up next?
Hi everyone, I had the pleasure of facilitating the Strategic Collaboration and Mapping Resources breakout session, and these were the major takeaways. Collaboration includes thinking about power balance and relationships. We talked a lot about who is in power, who's in control, and what does that look like when you're having comprehensive collaboration, meaningful connections with each other. We also talked about, in the session, we had an activity where people got to write down their mission, target audience, goals and approach to the work that they're looking for, along with other funding needs that they have. And people were able to connect on transportation issues, knowing that one of them was the Safe Routes to School collaborator and one was a part of BART. And so just seeing how those connections happen more cohesively when we have time to network is really special. And then the last few are just thinking about hopes for the future, moving towards action and removing competition amongst significant community-based organizations, looking outside of the sector you're working in to address climate change, and that might include the health sector, childcare, other sectors that we don't think of innately when we're talking about environmental issues, but really when we're addressing the climate crisis, we're doing that all together. So we need to go cross-sector. And then finally, networking is the first step of meaningful and long-term collaboration. Thank goodness we have another hour and a half of that ahead of us here.
Thank you. So we're doing the community research partnership and data. I think it was a really, really interesting session. Thank you, everybody, to being there. So I think one of the first things that we come up is to design the research around benefiting the community, which means to us is that, the community owns the research, and we want to benefit our communities where the researchers are there, not only for the sake of the researchers, but for the sake of the community. Equal partnerships and transparency in budget beforehand. What it means to us is that, we need to talk about funding for community members, money for food, money for childcare, paying our community members to be at the table because they are the experts on our communities. So the other one, it was clean efforts from researchers to get to know the community beforehand. What it means to us, again, is that, are you going to my community? You're welcome to my community, but you need to stay in our communities. You need to be in our communities. It's not only one shot thing. It has to be a long-term relationship. And give credit to CBOs. Wherever you find, wherever you write a research paper or any kind of paper, you need to give credit to your community. Being there saying, okay, thanks for the community, because often enough, we don't get credit for the work or the stuff that we do. Establishing trust also, it was really, really important to us. We need to trust each other and work with each other. Don't go and use our communities. That's what building trust, establishing trust means to us. And the last one is try to promote value in the community. Value in community to the top of the ladder decision maker. So the community is the one who is going to make the decision. At the end, it's not the researcher, it's not our partners, it's the community that we belong, that do the researchers. I want to thank my partners today. I don't know if they're still here, but it was a great group. Thank you. Now, nature-based solutions.
Thank you, Julio. Hello, everyone. Francesca here with Rice House City. And I'm going to talk about our nature-based solutions. And some of our key takeaways are the restoration of creeks. As you heard, that's something that it's, well, I think everything is kind of on an urgent level, but definitely something very important that we need to focus on. And also allowing the environment to do its job, purifying air, water, and soil through the restoration. So I think this is pretty self-explanatory for all of us, allowing nature, as it was brought up today throughout the panels, allowing nature to do its thing. And also, but not only allowing nature to do its thing, but also, unite with nature and continue doing the work that we are doing so we can have a better tomorrow for our future children. And also the building of the horizontal levees as a way of sea level rise solutions and other solutions finding solutions for flooding and negatively affect communities. I think that the horizontal levees will help a lot on that. So those are very, very important things that we need to continue working on. And removing invasive plants and replacing them with native plants. We see that a lot of our our habitat around, it's actually covered in ice plant. I know that here at Colma Creek, I don't know how many of you have visited Colma Creek, but it's full of ice plants, and that is not necessarily good nor for our environment and our natural habitat and natural animals. So we need to remove those and bring the native plants and actually make it more suitable for everyone. And that's the next one, removing those plants and replacing them with native plants. And the green stormwater construction, so green streets within the communities. Again, just continue working to see the benefit for our communities, for everyone. And as Julio mentioned, thank you everyone for your partnerships. Thank you for being here. It has been an amazing day getting to talk to so many new people and getting to see a lot of people that we already collaborate with. And I hope that this is only the beginning to all of the work that we are going to be doing together. Thank you.
Hola, everyone. Sorry. There we go. My name is Jennifer Adams. I'm with Nuestra Casa. I'm the Environmental Justice Program Manager, and I'm going to be speaking on the youth voice in the local climate movement. It was a pleasure to hear some of our amazing youth that are, in our communities, working with a lot of the organizations that are here today. Some of the things that were taken from that session is that it's not a job for students, it is what they want to do in their free time. So we want to make sure too that we provide equitable opportunities for our youth, that it's not something that they have to choose to do on their free time, that we can also compensate them to make sure that there's not any barriers for our youth to take on these opportunities. Some of us as CBOs need volunteers. How do we build opportunities that are rewarding for youth to support the work we can do together? And again, with that as well, right, really making sure, and some of our youth showed that today, there are other ways to really involve our youth and embed them in the work that we do, and it's not just a potential like internship and then they move on, that we continue to build and be mentors for our youth to really make sure that they are in this space on an ongoing basis. Students are noticing climate change and dissatisfied with the lack of action in their communities. So I think that really speaks to why some of our youth were here today and really speaking on their stories, on what is driving them. Youth are really engaged in environmental justice, and we need to platform them with stipends to set them up for meaningful work. That's just an echo, right? We want to make sure anytime we're working with partners, anytime we are planning programs, that we really think about how can we compensate our youth to make sure that they can take this opportunity fully and make it a priority, and that it doesn't become a barrier for them to do this, or that they're not at the table because they have to have a job, right, and be able to survive, so that we can provide them that opportunity. And then lastly is continued vocational training for youth to ensure success. So, what are ways that we can provide those opportunities, but also how can we connect them with maybe partners we're already working with on a regular basis to amplify those opportunities to our youth, right? Really thinking about not just engaging our youth internally, but connecting with our network, connecting with our partners to really see, what are ways that they can connect with another organization or agency that might have an opportunity for them. So really thinking more on, not checking a box. I think that's something for me that's really been a topic for today is, making sure we're not just checking a box, that we're really, putting the effort and really making sure that we're mentoring our youth and really showing up. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Muscolta, Director of Community Resilience at Thrive Alliance. I supported the Breakout panel on Resilience Hub Networks, facilitated by Susan Silver, and with Brian Whitlow, Gregory Stevens, and Ana Vendaño, who couldn't actually be here today. We had a very active audience, and it was a fun discussion. Some of our main takeaways are that resilience hubs need to be centered in community. They need to be designed for the community that they serve. That means that there is no one that is exactly like another, right? They are unique to those that are living around them. And this also means that they can respond to community needs in unique ways. One of the great points that a panelist brought up was high heat, and how traditionally we have had relatively rigid thresholds at which we respond as counties and cities to high heat events. But resilience hubs, which are much more sensitive to community needs and much more nimble, can respond more organically to those needs when we do have an emergency like that. Something very key that we discussed is the importance of day-to-day programming. We don't want resilience hubs to just be emergency hubs. We want them to be a meaningful place for community on a day-to-day basis. That means meeting basic needs, potentially being a food distribution site, potentially being a childcare site, right? Places that people go every day because they need and want to, and that makes them more comfortable, more familiar with the place, more willing to go in times of emergency. Gregory is from Interfaith Power and Light, and he made a really wonderful point that places of worship are excellent potential sites for resilience hubs. They often are an existing place of trust for many in the community, and they have a lot of real estate. They have a lot of land and space available. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and you should talk to Gregory, Interfaith Power and Light, if you want to know a little bit more about their work. And finally, we can't just have one organization say, all right, I'm going to do resilience hubs now, right? This is a network approach. We need really key partnerships. We need cross-sector, cross-disciplinary partnerships. This is something we have to do together. So moving forward, we need to, establish MOUs, start talking to each other, and make this a group effort to implement a network of resilience hubs in San Mateo County. I'm going to pass it back to Georgia for some closing remarks now.
Thank you, Anna. Let's give a round of applause to all the facilitators and leaders of the breakout session. So they all actually, I think, worked through lunch to synthesize a lot of information. And so I think this is great because it's not just another conference where we talk and move on. I think there are a lot of really concrete reflections and next steps and even collaborations that are going to come of this. And I think the leaders are committed to that, and so I'm really, really happy about that. It is my honor to now introduce a real activist in this space, Senator Josh Becker. I'm going to briefly tell you a little bit about him if you don't know already. Senator Josh Becker is a public policy innovator working at the nexus of community activism, technology, and social justice. Elected to the state Senate in November 2020, Senator Becker represents the residents of California's 13th Senate District, which comprises most of San Mateo County and the northern part of Santa Clara County. He is the author of several bills focused on accelerating California's transition to 100% clean energy and net zero emissions, voter access and justice reforms, and leveraging technology to provide greater economic mobility for all Californians. Let's welcome Senator Josh Becker.
Like the pink mic. Well, it's great to see all of you. I'm aware that I'm the only thing standing between you and cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. So as such, I will limit my PowerPoint deck to 47 slides. I'm kidding, or am I? You don't know. Anyway, it's great to to hear those reports out. It was really helpful to give a sense of what you covered today, and it was a lot. Hearing everything around collaboration, around the youth voice, around the funding for resilience, around nature-based solutions. You covered a lot of areas, and it sounds like there'll be some real tangible takeaways. And one of the most exciting things when I looked at the agenda and we discussed it was the real focus on bringing everyone to the table and making sure all the voices are present. And the legislature, among the climate, we have a climate cabal in the Senate, and then there's kind of one in the Assembly. But around our kind of leading climate folks, environmental justice was also the theme for this year as well. So making sure that environmental justice is part of everything that we do. So, for example, this year passed a big bill. I was talking to Supervisor Pine around large buildings. How do we reduce emissions from large buildings? And there's now evidence-based best practice across the country that New York City did, Washington State, Colorado, called Building Performance Standards. And, I won't go into the whole detail, benchmarking, then you set the standards and the penalties if you don't reach it. But there's a methodology. But we made that a 2-year process. We spent the whole first year, we're going to spend the first year, before we even introduce the bill, spend the whole first year talking to environmental justice groups and the larger community to make sure that if we implement this, it's not going to, say, raise rents in large buildings in a way or it's going to give landlords an excuse to kick people out because they now have to renovate to do these environmental justice solutions. So it's part of everything that we do. And one of the really fun things for this year is my first year of chairing a budget subcommittee. And I chair the budget subcommittee, as you may know, on everything climate, everything natural resources comes through my budget subcommittee. And so we're really focusing on how can we get some of these things now into the budget or into the climate bond. We're working on a bond. We had a $15 billion climate bond. It's going to get definitely scaled down. But how can we, again, make sure that environmental justice is part of this and many things that you talked about here today can get funded? And as you can imagine, that's not easy. There's lots of priorities, lots of things that people want, but we're trying to see how can we now incorporate these things. So even just hearing the discussion briefly on resilience centers was really helpful to me because that's something I've worked a lot on, especially with the Asian Pacific Environmental Network with APEN has been a real leader in that. Again, extreme heat, another thing that I heard mentioned, and we have legislation around this too. How do we not have such rigid definitions around extreme heat? How do we really now have a plan for how extreme heat is going to affect our state and increasing areas of the state, including the farm worker population? How are we going to adjust as it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, which, unfortunately, it will. On the youth point, I want to make sure everyone knows about the California Volunteers has done some really incredible work with our climate conservation course. So this is like a really big opportunity. I was at Climate Week in New York, and now the Biden administration is taking this model and scaling it. And I'm happy to follow up with people, but California Volunteers, ca.gov has more about the climate course. So this really gets back to this whole national service piece and how can we create ways for youth to be engaged in a way they actually get paid and get to do paid to do the work in the community that's going to train them for careers of the future as well. And one of the things we were just talking to Helen about, one of the things I got in the budget last year was money for Menlo Park to work. We've got $4.5 million for home electrification that is focused around Bellhaven, and now we're seeing if we can expand it out a little bit. But the idea is also to help train that workforce, so people who can do that work and then can go into careers in these areas. So with all of this, to be continued, of course, and I just want to again highlight Supervisor Pine and the work that's being done here with One Shoreline. San Mateo County is the county, as you know, most affected in the state by sea level rise, but also the one I think that is thinking most in advance about these issues, and one that we worked with as well. In the budget this year, when we toured, when we had the big rains, we saw that some of the mobile home parks were flooding. So I got $1 million in the budget for new pumps for our mobile home parks so we can pump out that water in some specific ones that we saw where it was a huge issue. So these are things we have to think about. These are things we have to plan. And, we're not going to be able to do it alone. We're all going to have to do together. So I'll leave you with a quote. This is a quote actually from Greta Thunberg, and she said that the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have all the facts and solutions we need. All we have to do is wake up and change. So here's to working with all of you to make sure that we wake up and change so that we can have a more resilient county and we can all move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Becker, for making the time to be here with us today. We hope you join us for the networking reception, which is happening just in a minute. So we asked you at the beginning of the day to think about what your commitment was going to be, and I think by now all of you have probably arrived at a few options. So we want you to, again, reflect. What will you do to help build power for community resilience in San Mateo County? We want you to write it down on the sticky. And as you're leaving, there's that little entryway where a few people are standing as you're going to be heading over there. Behind them, we want you to put that on the wall as you're walking out, just that one sticky with what you're going to do, what your personal commitment is. And I just want to say, we're going to close out now. I want to thank you all for being here throughout the day. It's been a wonderful summit. We're so grateful to you, to the planning committee. Please thank the planning committee for their efforts. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you to our sponsors. You've heard about them today. We're so grateful. And finally, your feedback is so important, whether it has to do with the temperature in the room, to the content, whatever it is. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear your ideas for next year. There's a very brief evaluation, and there's a QR code to get to it. Once again, thank you for being part of the second annual Climate Summit for San Mateo County, and we will see you next year. Thank you.